When the Earthborn soldier walked in, even the alien princess forgot she had a throne. The city floated above the clouds, a shining jewel of alien engineering. Towers stretched high, their surfaces glimmering with colors that shifted with the light, and bridges of translucent metal connected platforms that hovered effortlessly. Ships moved gracefully in the air, leaving trails of soft blue energy that shimmered like fireflies. At the heart of this magnificent capital, the palace rose above all else, an architectural wonder of curves and spires, crowned with a dome that reflected the sky. It was here that the alien princess ruled, her throne a symbol of power over a vast and intricate empire. Yet even surrounded by beauty and strength, the princess felt the heavy weight of responsibility pressing against her. The day began like any other, with the palace servants moving swiftly in quiet corridors and guards patrolling with vigilant eyes. The princess, tall and poised with hair that gleamed like liquid silver, sat on her throne, her posture perfect, yet her mind restless. Advisors murmured at her side, presenting reports of trade, military readiness, and whispers of rebellion. Every day, it seemed, she had to navigate a web of politics more intricate than the finest threads in the palace tapestries. Her people expected her to be both firm and fair, compassionate yet unyielding. It was a delicate balance, and one she had been trained for since childhood. Then, without warning, everything changed. The grand doors of the throne room opened, sliding smoothly into the walls with a quiet hum. Every eye turned as a human stepped inside. He was unlike any visitor the palace had ever received. He walked with the confidence of someone who belonged in no palace yet had no fear of it. His uniform was simple, practical, and marked with symbols of a world far from this alien capital. He carried himself with a quiet strength, his movements deliberate and calm, as if he had faced countless challenges and emerged unshaken each time. The princess felt a ripple of curiosity. She had heard rumors of humans, but no one had ever seen one in the capital, and certainly none had entered her court. Her advisors stiffened, exchanging cautious glances. Diplomats would usually announce themselves, send messages, and follow protocol. This human had done none of that. He had walked straight in. "Your Highness," he said, his voice steady, carrying across the great hall without strain. It was clear he was respectful, but his tone was not one of fear or subservience. "I am Captain Eli Grant from the planet Earth. I come seeking dialogue, not conflict." A murmur ran through the room. The princess's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. There was something different about him, something magnetic. He did not bow deeply, yet he carried no arrogance. He did not speak in riddles, yet his words carried authority. The alien nobles, used to intricate etiquette and carefully calculated words, felt a strange unease. Here was a man who, in a single sentence, unsettled the entire court simply by existing as he did. The princess rose from her throne. Her eyes, a deep shade of violet, studied him carefully. She was the ruler, trained to measure every visitor, every word, every gesture. Yet with this human, she found herself distracted. Something about his presence demanded attention. He seemed solid, real, unshakable in a way that made the careful layers of courtly manipulation feel fragile and unnecessary. "Captain Grant," she said finally, her voice calm but carrying an edge of command. "You have entered my court unannounced. Explain your purpose." The human nodded, standing straight. "I come as a representative of humanity, Your Highness. My mission is simple. I am here to observe, to understand, and to find ways for our worlds to avoid unnecessary conflict. We do not wish to impose, we wish to collaborate." The words were straightforward, almost naive in their simplicity, yet there was a weight behind them. The princess sensed it immediately. In the alien world, words were often weapons, full of layers and hidden meaning. This human spoke plainly, yet his meaning could not be doubted. He was honest, unafraid, and intelligent enough to carry his intentions clearly without subterfuge. An advisor stepped forward, his voice measured. "Highness, should we allow a human access to our plans, his presence may embolden dissenters or confuse the council." The princess raised her hand. "Silence. Let him speak." She found herself curious not only about his words, but about him as a person. Something about his calm confidence intrigued her. For a moment, she forgot about the throne, the crown, the endless responsibilities that usually consumed her mind. This human had entered, and in doing so, shifted the focus of her attention entirely. Captain Grant was led through the palace, moving with a quiet ease. He observed the technology and infrastructure with keen interest, yet without awe. His eyes, human in their simplicity, did not reflect fear or intimidation but careful analysis. He noticed details the alien engineers had overlooked. Small structural weaknesses, patterns in energy distribution, efficiency in defense systems. He saw them all. Not as an enemy, but as someone who understood strategy and survival. The princess watched him closely. She had trained her entire life to command, to anticipate the moves of allies and enemies alike. Yet she found herself learning from this human. His perspective was entirely different from anything in her world. Where her people saw complexity, he saw opportunity. Where her advisors debated endlessly over minor protocol, he acted decisively. A demonstration of the palace's security forces followed. Elite warriors performed intricate maneuvers, showcasing their skill in combat techniques honed over centuries. The human was invited to participate, not as a warrior but as an observer. Yet when the situation required, he moved effortlessly, responding with instinct, speed, and precision. His Earthborn training, grounded in reality and adaptability, allowed him to anticipate moves that the alien warriors themselves had never considered. The princess felt a strange mixture of admiration and surprise. Here was someone from a distant planet, who knew nothing of her empire's traditions, yet he moved through the court and its defenses with an almost uncanny understanding. His actions were unpolished compared to the alien standards of refinement, yet effective beyond measure. In the private moments between the demonstrations, whispers traveled through the corridors. Some nobles feared him. He was unpredictable, a variable they could not control. Others admired him quietly, sensing a potential ally or a sign of new possibilities. The princess, however, found herself in a different state entirely. She felt drawn to him not just as a soldier or a visitor, but as a presence that challenged her own perspective. Later in the observation chamber overlooking the city, Captain Grant stood beside her. He did not bow or make grand gestures. He simply looked out over the floating towers, his expression thoughtful. "Your city is remarkable," he said finally. "Your people are talented, but they are predictable in ways that might be dangerous if enemies act without restraint." The princess considered his words carefully. In her world, such honesty was rare and often dangerous. Yet he spoke with respect, not judgment. His human eyes met hers, steady and unwavering, as if he expected nothing and demanded nothing, yet spoke the truth anyway. "You see things differently," she said, her voice softer than before. "Most of my advisors would never point out weaknesses so openly." He smiled faintly. "On Earth, we learn to adapt quickly. We rely on quick thinking and trust in our instincts. Rules are important, but flexibility often matters more." The princess felt an unusual warmth in her chest. She realized that in the presence of this human, she was not the ruler defined by her throne or her lineage. For a brief, fleeting moment, she was simply a person, curious and intrigued. She felt the weight of her crown lighten, replaced by the weight of fascination and unexpected respect. As the day progressed, the human observed the empire's council meetings, the flow of trade, and the routines of the palace. Everywhere he went, he remained calm, asking questions that were simple yet revealing. He pointed out inefficiencies, suggested alternative strategies, and did so without condescension. Slowly, the princess saw her advisors begin to shift their attitudes. Some resisted, clinging to tradition, while others began to see value in his perspective. By evening, the human had walked through the heart of the capital, visited the armory, and observed the palace's strategic operations. Everywhere he went, he left a subtle impression. People felt a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and unease. He was unlike anyone they had known, yet his presence inspired confidence rather than fear. The princess returned to her private chambers after a long day, her thoughts unsettled. She had ruled her empire for many years, faced countless challenges, and yet she had never felt quite like this. This human, who had walked into her court with nothing but his presence and honesty, had reminded her of something she had long forgotten: the power of simplicity, courage, and clarity. As she gazed out over the city, watching the lights flicker across floating platforms and spires, she realized that her empire's future might be changed, not by strategy alone, nor by inherited power, but by the unexpected influence of a being from a distant world who refused to play by their rules, yet demanded nothing. For the first time in her life, she felt the pull of something new, something dangerous, something exhilarating. She was a princess, but in the presence of this Earthborn soldier, she forgot for a moment that she had a throne. The city below shimmered in the twilight, but it was nothing compared to the fire of curiosity and challenge ignited within her. And the human, Captain Eli Grant, stood quietly, unassuming and steady, unaware of the ripple he had created in the heart of an empire. The morning light filtered through the crystalline windows of the palace, casting patterns of gold and blue across the polished floors. The city outside buzzed with activity, ships gliding above the clouds, merchants trading rare goods, and the hum of machinery moving tirelessly. Inside, the palace felt quieter, but the air carried a tension that could almost be felt. The arrival of the human soldier had unsettled everyone in the court, and the princess herself had not yet fully recovered from the unexpected impact of his presence. Captain Eli Grant began his day with a tour of the palace's inner workings. He was guided through halls filled with alien technology that seemed almost magical, yet he observed each device critically, noting patterns, efficiencies, and potential weaknesses. Where others saw complexity, he saw opportunity. Where they saw perfection, he saw room for improvement. His observations were made without judgment or arrogance. He simply noted what he saw, always thinking 2 steps ahead. The alien princess followed at a discreet distance, intrigued by how he moved and how he thought. She had been trained to judge people quickly, to detect motives hidden behind words and gestures, yet this human puzzled her. He was honest in a way that was almost disarming, direct yet polite, confident but not boastful. Every action he took drew the eyes of the court, yet he seemed unaware of the attention he commanded. "Your defenses are impressive," he remarked as they passed through the armory. "But some of your patrol routes overlap too much. If an enemy observed them, they could predict your response." An officer bristled at his words, but the princess raised a hand to silence him. She found herself considering the human's insight seriously. In her court, criticism without careful phrasing was often seen as insolence. Yet here, the human's words were precise, clear, and impossible to dismiss. "Why do you speak so plainly?" she asked, curiosity evident in her tone. "Because it works," he replied simply. "Complicated words often hide confusion. Simple words can reveal the truth." She smiled slightly, a rare expression for someone usually reserved and composed. For a moment, the weight of her crown felt lighter. There was something refreshing in this human's perspective, something she had not experienced in years of courtly debate and strategy meetings. Later, they visited the palace's training grounds, where elite warriors demonstrated combat techniques passed down through generations. The movements were fluid, precise, almost beautiful, yet there was a rigidity to them, a reliance on tradition that limited adaptability. The human watched quietly, studying their patterns, and then asked if he could participate. The warriors exchanged skeptical glances. A human participating in a display of combat mastered over centuries. Yet the princess nodded, curious to see how he would respond. He stepped onto the platform without hesitation. His movements were unfamiliar to the aliens, grounded, flexible, and instinctive. Where their style relied on form and repetition, his relied on observation and reaction. He dodged with timing they did not anticipate, countered with techniques improvised in the moment, and adapted to every attack with quick thinking. The warriors, skilled as they were, found themselves challenged in ways they had never experienced. The princess watched, captivated. She had always valued strength and skill, but what amazed her most was not his physical ability, it was his mind. The human soldier saw possibilities where others saw limits. He acted without fear, without concern for protocol, and yet he remained controlled, focused, and respectful. In that moment, the throne and all its weight seemed distant. All that mattered was the presence of this remarkable being before her. After the demonstration, she led him to a council meeting. Alien advisors and generals were already gathered, discussing trade disputes and security concerns. The room was tense, filled with cautious glances and measured words. When the human entered, a hush fell over the assembly. He did not bow deeply or speak in the expected formalities. He simply greeted the council and took a seat at the edge of the room. His calm demeanor was unsettling. The council had not dealt with someone so composed, so clearly observant, who did not seek to dominate yet could not be ignored. He listened carefully as the advisors debated, then spoke, offering suggestions that were simple yet striking in their effectiveness. Your patrols could be more efficient if you staggered them, he said. Your communication lines could be encrypted differently to avoid interference. And if your supply chains had a backup route, you could prevent shortages in case of conflict. The room was silent. Some advisors frowned, feeling their authority challenged. Others leaned forward, intrigued by his insights. The princess watched closely, noting the subtle shifts in attention and loyalty. She realized that his ideas were not just practical, they inspired confidence. People trusted him, even without understanding why. The day continued with further exploration of the palace and the city. The human asked questions not just about technology, but about culture, values, and the challenges of leadership. His curiosity was genuine, never mocking, and his questions prompted the princess to think in ways she had long ignored. By mid-afternoon, the palace received news of unrest on the outskirts of the empire. A small faction of rebels had gathered, threatening trade routes and minor settlements. The council debated responses, some advocating immediate military action, others calling for diplomacy. The human listened, then offered a perspective that startled the room. You have the strength to respond directly, but you risk overextending, he said. If you act decisively, you could prevent further unrest, but consider using strategy that adapts to the enemy's unpredictability. Flexibility can be more powerful than sheer force. The generals exchanged uneasy glances. The princess, however, found herself nodding internally. He was right. Her empire often relied on rigid plans, and this human offered an approach that combined caution with boldness, efficiency with adaptability. She realized that his presence could change the way she led, not by replacing her authority, but by expanding her perspective. As evening fell, the human accompanied her to the palace's observation deck. The city stretched out beneath them, glowing softly in the twilight. Ships moved like silver threads, and the air was filled with a gentle hum of energy. The princess stood quietly thinking, while the human remained beside her, silent yet attentive. "You see things clearly," she said after a moment, "in ways my advisors never can." He turned to her, eyes steady. "I see what's practical, not what's expected. Tradition can be valuable, but it can also blind leaders to what's possible." She studied him, feeling a mix of admiration and unease. He challenged her not with words meant to dominate, but with insight that made her question her assumptions. It was rare for anyone to do that, and rarer still for someone from another world. "Why do you care?" she asked softly. "You are from so far away." "Why involve yourself in our affairs?" "Because survival, growth, and understanding are universal," he replied. "Your people, your empire, your challenges, they matter, and sometimes seeing things clearly can prevent unnecessary suffering." She was silent, reflecting on his words. He had entered her world unannounced, disrupted the normal flow of her court, yet he had done so with respect, intelligence, and courage. His presence had a quiet power that made her reconsider her own authority and the ways she had led. That night she could not sleep. Thoughts of the human soldier filled her mind. His insights, his confidence, and his calm presence had shaken her in ways she did not expect. She had faced rebellion, diplomatic crises, and military challenges, yet none had affected her as profoundly as this single visitor. She realized that even her throne, the symbol of centuries of power and tradition, seemed less important compared to the clarity and courage he represented. The human, in contrast, slept simply in a small room prepared for him. He thought about the day with careful consideration. He noted strengths and weaknesses, strategies and opportunities. But beyond that, he sensed the subtle dynamics of leadership, culture, and loyalty in a world vastly different from his own. He understood that survival and success were not only about technology and skill, they were about trust, understanding, and adaptability. When morning arrived, the princess was ready to face the day with a renewed sense of perspective. She had seen the potential that the human brought, not only in practical strategy, but in inspiration. Her people had leaders, warriors, and advisors, yet this one human reminded her that courage, clarity, and creativity were just as important as tradition and power. She called a meeting with her council and generals. Captain Grant stood nearby, silent but attentive. The princess outlined new plans for defense, trade, and communication, integrating some of his suggestions while maintaining her authority. The council was hesitant, but they could not ignore the practicality of her ideas. The human's influence was subtle but undeniable. By midday, the city and palace felt the ripple of change. Soldiers trained differently, strategies were adjusted, and advisors began to reconsider their positions. Captain Grant's presence had shifted the dynamic of the court. He was not a ruler, yet he commanded attention and respect. He was not part of the empire, yet he affected its course profoundly. The princess, observing all of this, felt a quiet satisfaction. She understood that leadership was not just about holding a throne, it was about seeing possibilities, embracing clarity, and having the courage to act. And for the first time in many years, she felt the stirrings of excitement, curiosity, and perhaps even hope. The human soldier had not just walked into her court, he had walked into her mind, her thoughts, and her perspective. He had reminded her that even a princess, powerful and trained for leadership, could learn, adapt, and grow when confronted with courage, honesty, and insight from an unexpected source. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the city, she looked out once more from the palace balcony. Captain Eli Grant stood beside her, calm and composed, unaware of the profound effect he had on the Empire's ruler. She felt the pull of something extraordinary. This was no ordinary visitor. This was someone who could challenge her, teach her, and perhaps change the course of her world forever. And for the first time since taking her throne, she felt something she had not felt in years. The unshakable thrill of possibility. The city had settled into a rhythm, its floating towers glowing softly under the light of twin suns. Yet beneath the calm, tension hummed like a hidden current. Scouts reported unusual movements on the outer edges of the empire. Small groups of rebel forces had gathered, and rumors suggested that a neighboring system might be supporting them. The palace was alert, but no one could predict what would come. Captain Eli Grant had been observing the city and the palace operations closely. His Earthborn instincts told him that something was brewing beyond the reports and routine patrols. He walked alongside the princess through the corridors of the palace, discussing strategy, logistics, and the human ways of thinking about conflict. The princess listened, her violet eyes focused, absorbing every detail. She had already begun to rely on his judgment, though she would never admit it openly to her council. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the palace. Red lights swept across the walls, and the hum of energy intensified. The palace's central communications system relayed urgent messages. A hostile fleet had emerged on the edge of the Empire's territory. They were well-armed, organized, and moving quickly toward the capital. The council erupted in panic. Generals barked orders, advisors shouted warnings, and the soldiers prepared for an attack. The princess remained calm, though her pulse quickened. She glanced at Captain Grant. He stood quietly, scanning the reports, his expression steady, unshaken by the chaos around him. "They're approaching fast," he said, "but they're predictable. Their formation follows a pattern I've seen before. If we act now, we can minimize damage and protect the city." An advisor scoffed. "You are a human, Captain. You cannot understand their tactics." "Only our elite generals can plan a defense." Captain Grant turned to him calmly. "Perhaps, but I can see what your generals are missing." The princess's heart raced, but she trusted him. She nodded, signaling the council to listen. For the first time, the human would have the chance to influence the Empire's defense on a large scale. "Divide your defenses," he instructed. "Use smaller, flexible squads rather than relying solely on the main fleet. Their technology is strong, but their strategy is rigid. If we anticipate their moves, we can create traps and force them into mistakes. Protect the civilians first, then counterattack when their formation breaks." The generals exchanged uncertain glances, but the princess spoke. "We follow his plan. Captain Grant's insight may be our advantage." Her declaration silenced dissent, and the council moved to execute the orders. Soldiers rushed to positions, energy shields were raised, and small strike teams deployed throughout the city. As the fleet drew nearer, the human soldier walked among the troops, giving quiet instructions, observing their readiness and boosting morale. Unlike the rigid alien commanders, he connected with the soldiers through respect, clarity, and calm authority. His presence inspired confidence. The first wave of enemy ships entered the city's airspace. Energy beams sliced through the sky, but the strike teams anticipated their path. Using the strategy suggested by Captain Grant, they created diversions, luring enemy ships into areas fortified with hidden traps. Explosions lit the sky, but the palace and civilian districts remained largely unharmed. The princess watched from the observation deck, her heart pounding. She could see her people responding to the humans' guidance, moving with coordination and courage. Where panic might have taken hold, there was determination. She realized that in the midst of crisis, this human had become more than a visitor. He was a symbol of hope, a catalyst for action. As the battle intensified, a squadron of enemy fighters broke through the outer defenses and approached a residential sector of the city. Captain Grant acted quickly, directing a small team to intercept. His movements were precise, his decisions immediate. He anticipated the enemy's maneuvers, countering them before they could strike. The soldiers under his command moved with efficiency, guided by his calm authority and tactical foresight. The princess felt a mix of admiration and awe. She had seen warriors and generals in her empire, skilled and trained for decades, yet none reacted with the clarity and adaptability of this human. He was not only strong and skilled, he was intelligent, strategic, and unafraid to make bold decisions under pressure. As the battle raged, the enemy fleet began to falter. Their rigid strategies could not adapt to the unexpected moves of the smaller, flexible squads. Energy beams missed targets, ships collided, and confusion spread through their ranks. Captain Grant's plan was working. The princess, still watching from the deck, realized that her perception of power had shifted. Leadership was not just about titles, traditions, or inherited authority. It was about vision, courage, and the ability to inspire and guide others through uncertainty. The human soldier had reminded her of this in ways she had never experienced. Hours passed, and the tide of battle turned decisively in favor of the Empire. The enemy fleet, demoralized and disorganized, began to retreat. Captain Grant coordinated a measured counterattack, ensuring that their withdrawal did not result in further casualties. The city, while scarred in places, had survived the assault largely intact. In the aftermath, the palace and council gathered to assess the situation. Soldiers returned, exhausted but triumphant. The princess walked among them, observing the results of their efforts and the subtle influence of the human soldier. He stood quietly, as if part of the palace yet apart from it, his presence a calming anchor amidst the chaos. "You have done well," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "Your strategy saved lives and preserved the city." He inclined his head respectfully. "Your people acted bravely. I only helped guide them. The credit is theirs." The princess smiled faintly, realizing that his humility only added to the admiration she felt. He had demonstrated that true strength lay not in pride or ceremony, but in action, insight, and integrity. She saw how the soldiers looked at him, not with fear, but with respect and trust. As the council debriefed, the human soldier offered further advice on rebuilding and preparing for future threats. His suggestions were practical, clear, and rooted in logic, yet they also reflected an understanding of morale and human, or in this case, universal, nature. He emphasized adaptability, trust, and foresight, qualities often overlooked in rigid systems of command. The princess listened carefully. She felt a growing connection, not only to his mind, but to his character. He was a reminder of the strength that could emerge from courage, honesty, and ingenuity. In his presence, she realized that leadership was not just about holding a throne. It was about inspiring others to rise to their potential. Later, in the quiet of the evening, she found herself alone with him on the observation deck once more. The city below was calm, the fires of battle extinguished, and the lights of the floating towers shimmered like stars reflected on water. The princess studied him quietly, her thoughts turning inward. "You change the way people see things," she said softly. "Even me." He met her gaze without hesitation. Change is often necessary. Sometimes people are trapped by what they think they must do rather than what they can do. Seeing new possibilities is the first step toward better outcomes. She nodded, understanding the depth of his words. For the first time, she felt that the future of her empire was not solely in her hands. She had advisors, warriors, and resources, but the human soldier had reminded her that perspective, courage, and clarity were just as vital. The night passed with quiet reflection. The princess could not sleep, her mind alive with the events of the day and the realization of what had occurred. The human soldier had not only led her people through a crisis, he had changed her understanding of leadership, strategy, and trust. She realized that even her throne, a symbol of power and authority, seemed less significant compared to the clarity and courage he brought into her world. Captain Eli Grant, meanwhile, reviewed the battle quietly, noting successes and areas for improvement. He thought not of glory or recognition, but of understanding, learning from each situation and preparing for the next. He had proven that humanity, with its ingenuity and adaptability, could stand alongside the mightiest forces in the galaxy. By morning, the palace had returned to routine, though a new energy pulsed through it. Soldiers moved with renewed confidence, council members reconsidered their assumptions, and the princess walked with a quiet determination. She understood that the events of the past day would be remembered, not only for the survival of the city, but for the lessons learned and the unexpected influence of a visitor from a distant world. Captain Grant stood beside her as she addressed the council, offering insights and suggestions drawn from both his experiences and the lessons of the recent battle. The council listened, some still skeptical, others impressed by the clarity of his thinking. The princess, however, felt a quiet satisfaction. She knew that she had seen the potential of humanity firsthand, its courage, intelligence, and adaptability, and that the human soldier had proven himself not by alien standards, but by universal ones. As the day progressed, whispers of admiration and curiosity spread through the palace. Soldiers spoke of his calm presence in battle, generals spoke of his strategic insights, and advisors spoke of his ability to see possibilities where others saw limitations. The human had not only survived the attack, he had inspired, guided, and transformed the people around him. The princess, observing all of this, felt a deep sense of respect and something more subtle but equally powerful: trust. She realized that her empire's future might be stronger, not because of her throne or her lineage, but because of the courage, insight, and adaptability she had witnessed in this human soldier. As the sun set once more, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, she stood quietly on the observation deck. Captain Eli Grant was beside her, calm, composed, and unaware of the profound effect he had on the Empire's ruler. She realized that this human had done more than survive a battle. He had changed the way she viewed leadership, strength, and possibility. And for the first time, she felt something extraordinary: hope. The day after the battle, the palace was alive with activity. Soldiers were repairing damaged platforms and recalibrating energy shields. Engineers worked tirelessly to restore communication systems disrupted during the fight, while advisors convened in urgent meetings to reassess trade and security. The city's citizens, though still shaken, moved with cautious optimism, their trust renewed by the successful defense. The alien princess walked through the corridors quietly, her mind occupied not with her throne, but with the human soldier who had shifted the course of events so effortlessly. Captain Eli Grant had spent the morning observing troop deployments and helping reorganize patrols. He moved among soldiers with ease, offering advice, encouragement, and tactical insights, all without any need for ceremony. The troops respected him, not because of rank or title, but because of his calm presence and practical guidance. Where fear might have taken hold, his steady demeanor inspired confidence. The princess found herself drawn to him again. She had spent hours in meetings and briefings, yet it was his quiet, grounded wisdom that lingered in her mind. He did not seek attention or reward. He acted because he saw what needed to be done. In her world, such qualities were rare, and she realized how much she valued them. "Captain," she said as she approached him in a quieter courtyard, "the city owes you more than words can express." He shook his head. "I only did what I could to help. Your people fought bravely, and your guidance made it possible. I was just part of the process." She smiled faintly. "Even so, your presence changed things. You remind us that there is more than one way to see the world, and that sometimes courage and clarity matter more than experience or tradition." He looked at her thoughtfully. "It's easy to forget that sometimes. People become trapped by routines, by habits, by rules that no longer serve them. Change can be difficult but necessary." The princess nodded, understanding his meaning on a level she had not before. She had been a ruler her entire life, bound by tradition and expectations. Yet here was someone from another world, someone who did not belong to her empire, yet had opened her eyes to new ways of thinking. She realized that the future of her people might depend on such perspective, and that trust, not fear, could be the strongest foundation of leadership. As the morning progressed, reports arrived from the outer regions of the empire. While the major attack had been repelled, small rebel factions were still active. attempting sabotage and gathering support from hidden allies. The council debated strategies, some advocating for direct military action, others for diplomacy, but Captain Grant suggested a different approach. "Observe first," he said calmly. "Learn their patterns, predict their moves, then act with precision. Rushing into conflict will only strengthen their resolve. Flexibility and intelligence will achieve results without unnecessary loss." The generals murmured, skeptical of a strategy that relied on patience rather than force. Yet the princess supported him. "We follow this plan," she declared. "We will gather information first and strike decisively when we are certain of success." Her voice carried authority, and even the doubters fell silent. The day continued with careful planning and reconnaissance. Captain Grant worked alongside the palace strategists, integrating human tactics with the Empire's methods. He encouraged creative problem-solving, improvisation, and thinking beyond rigid patterns. The princess observed him closely, noting not only his intelligence, but his ability to inspire others to act thoughtfully and courageously. Later, she invited him to walk with her through the gardens of the palace. The air was warm and fragrant, filled with plants that glowed faintly under the twin suns. The gardens were meant for relaxation and contemplation, yet the princess could not shake the tension of the day. "You understand people in ways I cannot," she said softly, watching him as he examined a small, bioluminescent flower. "You see beyond appearances and traditions. You see what is possible." He looked up at her, his expression steady. "I have learned to observe carefully. People show who they are in their actions, not their titles. The more you watch, the more you understand. Leaders who listen and adapt are stronger than those who rely solely on rules." She considered his words. In her empire, titles, lineage, and protocol often overshadowed insight and practicality. Yet she had seen the results of his approach firsthand. His calm judgment and adaptable thinking had saved the city and inspired her people. She realized that strength came not only from power, but from courage, intelligence, and trust. As they walked, a sudden alert sounded across the palace grounds. A small group of palace guards rushed toward a side entrance, signaling that an intruder had been detected. Captain Grant immediately moved with them, his instincts sharp. The princess followed, curious and cautious, her mind alert. At the entrance, they found a figure attempting to sneak into the palace, a minor noble from a rival faction, seeking to exploit the recent chaos. The human soldier assessed the situation quickly, directing the guards to block escape routes and approach strategically. The intruder, realizing they were cornered, attempted to flee, but was captured without incident. The princess watched, impressed by his calm command and the clarity of his thinking. In moments of crisis, he remained composed, focusing on solutions rather than panic. She realized that this quality was rare, even among her most skilled advisors and generals. "Why do you remain so calm?" she asked afterward once the intruder was secured. "Because panic never helps," he replied simply. "The situation is what it is. Acting with clarity achieves results. Fear only clouds judgment." She nodded slowly, understanding the depth of his insight. She had faced danger before, yet his presence made her see it differently. She realized that leadership required not only strength and skill, but the ability to remain composed and think clearly under pressure. Over the next several days, the princess and the human soldier worked together closely. They coordinated patrols, planned defenses, and observed the movements of the remaining rebels. With his guidance, the palace discovered hidden caches of weapons and supplies, dismantled small rebel networks, and strengthened alliances with neighboring regions. The empire's security improved rapidly, and the citizens began to feel the renewed stability of their world. Yet beyond the practical achievements, a bond grew between them. The princess found herself speaking openly with Captain Grant, discussing strategy, philosophy, and the challenges of leadership. He, in turn, shared stories of humanity, its struggles, triumphs, and the lessons learned through survival and ingenuity. Their conversations were respectful, thoughtful, and often filled with insights that neither had expected to find in the other. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, the princess and the human walked along the palace balcony. The city below shimmered, reflecting the fading light, and the air was filled with the soft hum of energy and distant ships. "You have changed the way I see my empire," she said quietly. I thought I understood leadership, but your presence has shown me that strength is not only in tradition, but in adaptability and courage. He looked at her, eyes steady. Leadership is about seeing possibilities and trusting people to rise to challenges. It is about guiding, not controlling. You have always had the ability, you just needed a reminder that there are other ways to approach difficult situations. She smiled faintly, feeling a warmth she had not experienced in years. His presence had reminded her that even as a princess, she could learn, grow, and embrace new ideas. She realized that her people could be stronger, more resilient, if she led with both wisdom and courage, inspired by insight rather than fear. As days turned into weeks, the human soldier continued to assist the Empire in ways that went beyond battle. He helped train soldiers, advised on trade routes, and encouraged creative problem-solving among the council. His influence was subtle but profound, changing the culture of the palace and the confidence of the citizens. Meanwhile, rumors of conspiracies and discontent within the palace began to surface. Some nobles, resentful of the princess's reliance on an outsider, plotted quietly, seeking to undermine her authority. Yet with the guidance of Captain Grant, the princess learned to navigate these schemes with tact, intelligence, and precision. Together, they uncovered plots before they could come to fruition, strengthening her position and protecting the empire from internal threats. In the quiet moments, away from council meetings and patrols, the princess and the humans spoke openly about their lives and experiences. She shared the burdens of leadership, the isolation of royalty, and the constant pressure to maintain appearances. He shared tales of Earth, of resilience, ingenuity, and the strength found in ordinary people. Their conversations were filled with mutual respect and understanding, each learning from the other in ways neither had anticipated. The bond between them grew, not through romance or sentimentality, but through shared experiences, trust, and admiration. The princess realized that this human had become more than a visitor or advisor. He had become a partner in thought and action, someone whose presence could not be ignored. One afternoon, as they reviewed plans for securing a distant trade route, the princess paused and looked at him thoughtfully. "You remind me that even the strongest ruler needs perspective," she said. "Even a princess must sometimes rely on someone else to see what she cannot." He nodded simply. "Even the most capable leaders benefit from fresh eyes. It is not weakness, it is wisdom." She smiled, feeling a quiet sense of reassurance. For the first time in years, she felt that her empire's future was not only secure but full of potential. With the human soldier by her side, she understood that strength, courage, and adaptability could overcome even the most complex challenges. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, the princess and Captain Grant stood together, looking out over the city. The empire had faced danger, navigated threats, and emerged stronger. The bond between them had grown, built on trust, respect, and the shared understanding that leadership required more than power. It required vision, clarity, and the courage to act decisively. And in that moment, the princess realized something extraordinary, that even as a ruler, even as someone born to command a throne, she had learned to see the world differently, to value insight over protocol, and to embrace the possibilities that came with courage, intelligence, and trust. Captain Eli Grant had not only proven the strength of humanity, he had proven that even the most powerful empire could benefit from perspective, adaptability, and the quiet courage of someone willing to act with clarity in the face of uncertainty. The future of the empire, once uncertain and threatened, now seemed full of promise. And the princess, standing beside the human soldier, understood that the path ahead, though challenging, was brighter for having him in her world. The calm that had settled over the capital was only temporary. Reports arrived in waves. Scouts had spotted a massive fleet approaching from a neighboring empire, far larger and more advanced than anything the city had faced before. Rumors suggested that this empire saw the recent internal unrest as a sign of weakness and planned to seize the palace and the throne. The council convened urgently, their usual confidence replaced by tension and uncertainty. The alien princess stood at the head of the table, her violet eyes scanning the faces of her generals and advisors. She had faced crises before, but this threat was unlike any other. The neighboring empire's technology was sophisticated, their strategy refined, and their ambition unrelenting. Yet beside her, Captain Eli Grant remained calm, observing the maps and reports with quiet intensity. "They are moving in standard formations," he said. "They rely on technology and overwhelming force, but their strategies are predictable. If we act with speed, creativity, and precision, we can exploit their rigidity." An advisor scoffed, trying to hide his skepticism. "You are human. You cannot understand their capabilities." "They outmatch us in every way." Captain Grant did not flinch. "Strength is not only measured by size or weapons. Tactics, adaptability, and morale matter as much. We can win if we use the advantages we have, rather than trying to match them ship for ship or soldier for soldier." The princess studied him, seeing again the calm authority that had guided her empire through earlier crises. She nodded, her voice steady and commanding. "We will follow his plan. The survival of the empire depends not on fear, but on strategy, courage, and trust. Captain Grant's insight will guide us." The council murmured, divided between doubt and reluctant agreement. Soldiers and commanders began mobilizing under the human's direction. He organized small, flexible squads, each tasked with specific objectives. He emphasized adaptability, coordination, and communication. Energy shields were positioned strategically, supply lines reinforced, and hidden traps prepared along predicted enemy routes. As the fleet drew near, the city's defenses came alive. Floating towers hummed with energy, patrolling ships moved in synchronized patterns, and soldiers stood ready, their confidence bolstered by the calm authority of the human who moved among them. Where fear might have taken hold, his presence instilled determination. The first wave of enemy ships entered the airspace with precision, expecting a straightforward battle. They were met with resistance the moment they approached the city. Small squads, positioned cleverly by Captain Grant, struck with speed and efficiency, using the city's terrain and technology to their advantage. Ships were drawn into traps, their formations disrupted, and confusion spread quickly among the attackers. The princess watched from the observation deck, her pulse steady despite the chaos below. She could see the human soldier moving among the troops, giving directions, adjusting plans, and reacting to unexpected developments. His calm, decisive actions inspired not only the soldiers but the citizens as well. Hope surged in her chest. This was leadership, not by fear but by action and clarity. Hours passed, and the battle intensified. Enemy forces attempted to regroup, launching strikes on multiple fronts. Yet every move they made was anticipated and countered. Captain Grant's adaptability and insight turned rigid strategies into weaknesses. The soldiers responded with skill and courage, guided by his calm authority. At a critical moment, a squadron of elite enemy fighters broke through the outer defenses, aiming directly for the palace. Panic might have set in, but the human soldier acted immediately. He directed squads to intercept, positioning them in unexpected formations that used gravity fields, energy shields, and the city's unique architecture to maximum advantage. The enemy fighters were slowed, disoriented, and eventually neutralized without damage to the palace itself. The princess felt a surge of admiration and awe. She had witnessed skill, courage, and strategic brilliance, yet what impressed her most was the human's ability to remain composed under pressure. His presence alone shifted the morale of the empire's defenders. He did not command with fear or authority. He commanded with insight, clarity, and trust. As the day turned into evening, the tide of the battle shifted decisively. Enemy forces, frustrated and disorganized, attempted to retreat. Captain Grant anticipated their moves, cutting off escape routes and ensuring that the withdrawal did not result in further attacks. By nightfall, the city was secure, the enemy fleet in full retreat, and the citizens celebrating their survival and the skill of their defenders. The council convened once more, this time with a sense of quiet relief and respect. Generals and advisors acknowledged the human soldier's role in guiding the city through a challenge that had seemed impossible. The princess stood at the head of the table, her voice carrying strength and gratitude. "Captain Eli Grant," she said, "your courage, clarity, and insight have saved this city and its people. You have proven that leadership and strength come in many forms, and that even the mightiest forces can be overcome with intelligence and adaptability. Today, humanity has shown its value to this empire, not through domination, but through action, respect, and vision." Captain Grant inclined his head humbly. Your people fought bravely. I only guided them. The credit belongs to those who acted with courage and unity." The princess smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting pride and understanding. She had learned something profound through this experience. That leadership was not just about authority or power, but about vision, trust, and the ability to inspire others to rise to challenges. She realized that even her throne, the symbol of centuries of power, was secondary to the influence of insight, clarity, and courage. In the following days, the empire recovered quickly. Damaged platforms were rebuilt, trade resumed, and the citizens felt the reassurance of renewed security. Captain Grant worked alongside the princess to strengthen alliances, improve training, and refine strategies, ensuring that the empire would be prepared for future challenges. His influence was subtle yet transformative, shaping the culture of the palace and the confidence of the people. During quiet moments, the princess and the human walked through the palace gardens, discussing strategy, philosophy, and leadership. Their conversations were filled with mutual respect, shared understanding, and the recognition that the future required adaptability and courage. She admired his humility, intelligence, and unwavering calm. He, in turn, respected her wisdom, decisiveness, and willingness to embrace new ideas. One evening, as the twin suns set and cast a golden glow over the city, the princess looked at him thoughtfully. "You have changed the way I see everything, my people, my empire, and even myself. You remind me that strength is not just about power, but about insight and courage." Captain Grant met her gaze steadily. "Leadership is about seeing possibilities and trusting others to rise to the challenge. You have always had the ability. You just needed to see that there are ways to achieve success beyond tradition or expectation." She smiled, feeling a warmth she had not known in years. His presence had taught her lessons that no book, advisor, or training could have conveyed. He had reminded her that even a princess, powerful and trained for leadership, could learn, grow, and embrace new perspectives. The human soldier had not only saved the city, he had changed the way the empire would see the future. He had proven that humanity, with its ingenuity, courage, and clarity, could stand alongside the mightiest forces in the galaxy. The final celebration was held in the palace courtyard. Citizens gathered to honor the defenders, and the princess took the opportunity to publicly acknowledge Captain Grant. She spoke with pride and sincerity, highlighting not only his skill but the values he represented: courage, intelligence, humility, and trust. The crowd cheered, not just for a hero, but for the idea that even from afar, a being of insight and action could inspire hope and strength. After the ceremony, the princess and Captain Grant stood together, overlooking the city. The lights of the floating towers shimmered softly, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of energy. She reflected on the journey, on the battles fought, the lessons learned, and the bond that had formed between them. "You have proven humanity's value to this empire," she said softly, "and you have reminded me that even a throne, the symbol of power, is less important than the courage, insight, and trust we bring to those we lead." He nodded. "It is not power that defines us, but what we do with it, and how we inspire others to act with clarity and courage." For the first time since the arrival of this human soldier, the princess felt the weight of her responsibilities balanced by hope. She understood that the empire's future would be stronger not simply because of her authority, but because of the lessons learned and the trust inspired by someone willing to act decisively and wisely, regardless of origin. The city slept under a calm sky that night, and the palace stood as a symbol of resilience, courage, and intelligence. The princess remained on the observation deck, reflecting on all that had transpired. Captain Grant stood beside her, quiet and composed, unaware of the profound effect he had on the ruler and the people of an entire empire. In that moment, she realized something extraordinary, that even a princess, with all the responsibilities, titles, and expectations of her world, could find guidance, inspiration, and perspective from someone from a distant land, someone who acted with clarity, courage, and insight. Humanity had proven itself not through domination, but through ingenuity, trust, and the ability to inspire others to rise to their potential. The empire was safe, its people secure, and its future brighter. And the princess, standing beside the human soldier who had walked unannounced into her world, understood that she had gained more than an advisor. She had gained a partner in thought, action, and vision. Together, they had shaped a new era for the Empire, one defined not only by power, but by courage, insight, and the endless possibilities of hope. As the night deepened and the city lights shimmered like stars, the princess smiled quietly. Even her throne, with all its weight and history, seemed smaller now compared to the lessons learned, and the bond forged through trust, courage, and shared purpose. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, the Empire would endure, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever the future held. And beside her, Captain Eli Grant remained steady, calm, and unassuming, a living reminder that even the smallest actions of courage and clarity could change the destiny of worlds.